Perfect. Welcome. Just checking if everything is working on the tech side. There you go. It's working. Thank you. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you all here today. Welcome to those new faces. And we start with a little ad or reminder that we have this. We have our feijoada fundraising, which is it's a Brazilian dish, very famous. And we have it on September 20th at noon. And this is going to be, it's usually a really good event where we get to share one of our favorite dishes from Brazil. And this will happen not here. It'll be September 20th, which I believe it's a Saturday. And it's at 12, and it's at a community center. It's called the Meadowlark Park Community. It's close to Chinook Center down in the south. So, hope to see you all there. If you could just send a message to us, to Carol, or just let us know that you're coming, just so we can get a better head count. That would be ideal. So, I invite you all. And it's in a month from now. And today, we usually start our chats with a little text to help us harmonize our thoughts and arrive and reach some sort of serenity before we start. And the text that we chose to read today is from a book called The Vine of Light, or Via Janus from Chico Xavier. And this is where the Spirit Emmanuel gives us an interpretation about a passage from Jesus, when Jesus in Matthew says, what do you do more than others? And then the interpretation that Emmanuel brings to us is initiated into the light of the new revelation. Christian Spiritists possesses treasures of understanding far beyond the ordinary comprehension of incarnate man. In truth, they know that life continues victorious beyond death, that they find themselves in the temporary school of earth for the sake of the spiritual enlightenment they need. They know that the physical body is but a garment wearing out day by day, that the trials and sorrows of the world are educational resources, that pain is the stimulus for the highest achievements, that our future harvest will unfold in accordance with the sowing of the present. They also know that the Lord's light will brighten our paths whenever we are in the service of good, that every opportunity for work in the present is a blessing from the divine powers, that no one is on the earth's surface for an excursion of easy pleasures, but rather on a mission of improvement. That justice is not an illusion, and the truth will astonish everyone. That existence in the physical sphere is a blessed workshop of labor, atonement, and redemption. And that the acts, words, and thoughts of the creature will always yield the fruits that pertain to them in the infinite field of life. Indeed, we know all of this. In view, then, of so much knowledge and information from the higher planes, blessing our joyful circles of spiritual work, It is just that we hear the Divine Master's question, what do you do more than others? So there's our text, and then we'll start with a quick prayer. I want to close our eyes, elevating our thoughts, our feelings, to a place of comfort, to a place of serenity, to a place of the present. And we ask our guardian angels, our Master Jesus, to help us today, to open our hearts as we talk about what it means to be a good person. We ask for help in our reflections, how it touches our hearts and minds. And we also ask that we may be enlightened, so we can leave here a little bit better than when we came. And as always, we want to thank for the opportunity to be here, all the prep work to make sure that this place brings us the comfort and the serenity that we need today. And we also thank for the opportunity to be here in communion, learning together and evolving together. May your light, Jesus, surround us with love and protection. So be it. Great. Thank you. Got some new faces. And so usually we have a talk with slides with a bunch of words and reading. But today we're going to do it a little differently. There's not going to be any reading material. There's just going to be a picture up here. I'm mostly going to be talking and invite you all to participate and to help us with your conversations, with your comments and questions. And in the end, let me know if it's better or worse, or it doesn't matter. Because the thing that I wonder is whether, especially in English, if it's better to have things on the screen for you guys to read or not. So let me know. Bear with me as we go through it. And the talk today is about a good person. What does it mean to be a good person? As we reflect about our behaviors, our society, our role in society, what does it mean to be a good person? And the reason for this topic, the reason for this chat, is on Wednesday, simply I was talking to a friend and we were going to start to read a book. And then I told her, I offered her two, and I say for today, we're just going to open the book randomly. So I was showing to her. So you just take the book, open it randomly, and then we'll read a text and pray. And then as I was demonstrating to her, I opened this book, and it landed exactly on a text called, in Portuguese, is O Homem de Bem, which is a famous text from this book here, The Gospel According to Spiritism. And in English, it means the good person or moral persons, depending on the translation. So that text, opened up and it really caught my eyes, and I thought, well, that should be the topic of a presentation. So then I, dive in deep and learn, because I probably need to read this text more than anyone else. So that's why I chose this topic. And because of that, I dove a little deeper, and I'm glad I did. And to help me guide through this talk, I watched a talk by Haroldo Dutra Dias. He is a Spiritist from Brazil, and he does a lot of Spiritist talks, for those of you who know him. And he actually has a talk specifically talking about this passage, the good person. So I'm basing most of what I'm talking about here from him. I usually start my talks with Jesus, but today we're going a little bit behind. We're going before Jesus, just to talk about history for a couple minutes. Because in this little book here called The Way of Light, or Camino de Luz, Emmanuel, through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, he gives us a history lesson. It's a beautiful book. It talks a lot about, it explains a lot of what happened in history and millennia before Jesus even. So he alludes to chapter 8, he talks about China, and he brings the reflection on Confucius, who was you can call it maybe a philosopher in ancient China. And he says that Confucius was a missionary of Christ that came 500 years before Christ came to earth. And one of the main things that Confucius would talk about was twofold. He would always like to discuss about what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a person of integrity. And the two things that he would focus on was what it's usually coined as the silver rule, that he would say, he would preach to people, do not do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. He had the negative there. He said, don't do it to others what you don't want others to do to you. And then the second one was to always give your best, to always work to the best of your abilities. These are one of the two things he would mention around what it means to be a good person. And he was pretty famous because it became part of the Chinese culture, and then it actually also reached boundaries of land and reached Japan, Korea, and Vietnam. So he was a person of great influence at the time, and it's till this day. Some of his teachings are still living. And so this was before Christ. So you can. This is the beauty of this book. It kind of shows us all the work that Christ was doing before he came in other parts of the earth. And then, if we were to bring then Christ to it, or Jesus, he came to tell us and to develop and evolve a little bit this thought from Confucius to give us a little bit more information. And then he told us, he changed a little bit that what Confucius said about, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. He changed it, and he turned it to the positive, right? He said, do unto others what you would like others to do unto you. And that became the golden rule, as we all probably know. In Portuguese is, how is it in Portuguese? Fazer
ao próximo o que você queria que fizesse.
Yeah, thank you. Perfect. So yeah, probably all of us have heard this before. And to illustrate something about a good person, we're going to read a passage from Jesus. And this comes from the Sermon on the Mount, which is in Matthew 5, and then also in Matthew 7. And then I promise this will become more attractive. So, chapter 5, Sermon on the Mount, Sermon de Montagne. When Jesus said, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. So this is what people in his region had heard before when Jesus came. And then he's saying that now I tell you, for you to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So, if someone bad-mouthed you or said bad things about you, and you came to Jesus and asked him, okay, this person did this to me, what can I do? Can I fight back? Can I curse them back? And he would tell you, well, pray for them. If someone came and stole something from you and did something bad to you and went to Jesus and be like, well, what do I do with this person? He would say, forgive them. So Jesus was always focused on teaching us the virtues, to use our experiences to build our own virtues of love, of charity, and so on. It was always focused on our virtues. And then he goes on to say in the Sermon on the Mount, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Right? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? And this was the text that we read in the beginning. So Jesus is kind of inviting us to think, well, if you're loving those, in your family, or if you're doing good for all of your friends, what good is, what else can you do that would actually invite you to build your virtues? Because it's very easy to love someone in your family. The challenge comes is when you're trying to love your enemies and so on. So he was, poking at us to see if we can go a little bit deeper and take that further step. And then he ended that section by saying, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." So again, he was showing us our ability to perfect if we so choose. And then, which is what brings this whole chapter in the book, the Gospel According to Spiritism. This chapter is called "Be Perfect," which is exactly an interpretation of what Christ was talking about here. And then again, on the same Sermon on the Mount, on Matthew 7, Jesus said, "Do not judge, or you too will be judged." So now he's bringing us to some reflections around judgment. He's saying, "For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." So again, he was reminding us about judgment, and if you were to think around that passage from John, I think most of us know when there's an adulterous woman that's thrown in the square, and then you have the Pharisees asking Jesus, what does your law tell about this woman? What should we do with her? Because the Pharisees were going to stone her. And that brings that famous passage from Jesus that says, cast the first stone, throw the first stone, those of you who have not sinned. And then in Portuguese is, atire a primeira pedra aquele que nunca tenha pecado. So again, Jesus is teaching us a little bit on our relationship with others, right? How to relate with others. And to illustrate this, and what I like about Haroldo, who's the person that I watched the talk from, he always brings some passages from lives of people in Brazil. And this one is an example of Chico Xavier. I think most of you might have heard of Chico Xavier, a prominent medium in Brazil. And so we're going to bring a few stories about his life to illustrate this and see that this is not something that Jesus said so long ago and it's so far-fetched from us, but it's actually something that we can practice today. And so this thing that happened with Chico was he had a friend called Quincas, I believe, and he was an accountant, and this accountant got to his office one day, and then when he walked into his office, he realized it was broken into, and the thieves have gone into his office and stole all the valuables from his office. But not only did they steal everything, but they also trashed the place. They also broke the walls, they broke the doors and everything. And then Quincas was very angry, very, very sad. And then at night, when he would go to the Spiritist meetings with Chico, he sat there and was feeling angry and quite sad. And then when Chico came, he saw him and he realized that he was a little sad, and he sat next to him, he gave him a hug, and just stayed with him for a bit in silence, not talking, not saying anything, just being there, breathing. And then eventually, Chico told him, "Isn't it great to give back?" And that's a reflection there in itself. It's basically, there's lots to think about that, but it's basically an invitation for us to use the law of cause and effect as an opportunity for us to learn. So, with those simple words, right? Isn't it great to give back? Chico invited this person to reflect and realize that it wasn't an injustice that happened to him, because likely in a past life he might have done something a lot worse to those guys, and in this lifetime it happened to him. So instead of judging those guys, instead of trying to build some sort of revenge against the criminals, he invited him for reflection about responsibility and about the law of cause and effect. So, when those experiences happen to us, that might be a great thing to think about, right? Maybe I'm just giving back to what I maybe have stolen from before. So an anecdote from Chico in his always wise words. And then, Christ came to us about 2,000 years ago, and even then we learned from him for a bit, then we might have gone astray. And then Spiritism came back in around the 1850s to basically help us relive Christianity as it once was when Christ was here. Right, that's the goal, to hopefully help us, get back on track. And if we were to think, right, about the good person, don't we all want to be surrounded by good people? Don't we have sometimes that expectation, when I'm at work, that I'm surrounded by coworkers that are good people, that I have a boss that it's a good person? When I'm on traffic, don't I expect everyone around me to be a good person? Or if I go to a restaurant, I expect to be served by a good person. That the expectation is there. And now the question becomes, how are we doing? Are we being that good person that we expect others to be? How does that, if you change the reflection now to us, it invites us to think about how are we doing, how are we behaving.
I think Gandhi put this in a slightly different way, building on what you just said, which is literally be the change that you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
And so if you embody that, whatever expectation you may have about somebody else's life, if you embody that very quality in yourself, that could be the impetus for all the change that you want to see all around you.
Mm-hmm. It's quite easy to expect others to be the change and change, but truly it's on us to make the changes, right?
And you may find that you get the very result that you were hoping for in them as a result of the action that you. I can speak only for myself, but I've witnessed it, that when I want something very much from somebody else, and then I just double down and I'm going to do the best to embody that quality in all around me, without even putting any sort of pressure on those around me. I just see it, and just see it develop. It's almost like a guarantee that they just can't help themselves when it's just exuded out. They just let that quality somehow be inspired in them, and they just start demonstrating it. It's like if ever there are things that I would say is that's a miracle in this world, like that's an example of a miracle.
Sure, the examples they work as opposed to just words of a reprimand. Thank you for that, Zilla. And again, another example from Chico. To talk about that in specific, and to talk about, to think about the purpose of Spiritism, like we said, is to bring again Christianity back, is to bring us to a path of becoming a good person, right? Isn't that why we're all here? Isn't that why we all try to look at Spiritism as something that will help us guide to become that good person? So, another story about Chico. He was, as you know, he had a lot of Spiritist meetings at night. A lot of people would come. And after everything was done, then there was always a lineup to talk to him one-on-one, right? And the thing would go on for hours and hours ahead. And then there's one lady that came, and she was feeling, you could see that she was feeling quite sad and quite disappointed. And then she approached Chico and said, "Chico, it's my husband." Probably Chico said, "Oh my God, what did the husband do again?" And then the woman said, "Chico, my husband, he's a great husband." Not only that, he is a great father to our children. He's also a great worker. He has a great job, and everyone loves him at his job. And he's also a good person. Shiko, he has one crazy defect that I can't get past. And you might think, oh my God, what could it be? Right, a person
He's
is
perfect.
already he's perfect. You know, what is this defect? And then she said, Chico, he's not a spiritist. What would you reply? Right? What would you reply? And then Chico, you know, as usual, he was quiet for a bit, thinking, and then he looked back at this lady and said, so dear, you're telling me that your husband is a good husband, right? She said, yes, he's an excellent husband. And he's also a good father, absolutely. Couldn't have asked for a better father to my children. And he's also a good worker, a good person at work. He said, yes, he provides to us. And then he's also a good person in the community. Everybody loves him. She said, yes, he's excellent. And then he said, well, then he doesn't need spiritism. He's already there. That's another point of reflection. If you find, go ahead.
So today I was coming here and my daughters, they asked, so do we need a religion and something like that? Do we believe in God and Christ? And we just said, no, we don't need a religion. We just need to do good to others, have love. And I know a lot of people, they don't believe in Christ, they don't believe in God, but even so they are way better. They do better actions than people to go to church and things like exactly something like that. We don't need a religion or something like that. We just need to try to be a good person.
Exactly, thank you. And you know, if we're struggling, if we need help on how to become a good person, you know, this can totally teach us how to do that if you're looking for those guidelines. And you know, in that example, the wife needed to be a spiritist.
Yeah.
Her husband, not so much. He was already there, right? The purpose was already there.
Once I heard something, I'm not sure if that's true or not, but anyways, it was like, spiritist people are the ones that need the most to be spiritist.
Yep, absolutely.
So like, okay,
Yes.
let's continue.
Yeah.
And that's why Spiritism says there's no Spiritism doesn't say there's no salvation outside Spiritism. There's no salvation outside of charity, right? And if we comprehend what charity is, it encompasses everything that we need to do that.
That's so true.
Exactly. And I don't know who's the person that I based this talk on. He was joking. He said, "Have you ever seen any pure spirits giving a talk? You know, if you go to spiritist centers, have you ever seen a pure spirit giving a talk? No, because pure spirits don't need to be incarnated. Right? If we are incarnated here, it's because we have something to learn. Right? Especially if we're giving a talk, we have a lot to learn. And that's why you're doing it. So that just comes to show our level of imperfection, right? That we're still here to learn something, and as a result, we'll likely make some mistakes along the way. And now I'm going to read the text. It's half an hour later. That inspired this talk. So again, it's on chapter 17, I think. Yeah, 17 of the book. And it talks about that passage from Jesus about being perfect. And then Kardec brings that passage from Jesus and then, you know, explains a little bit the passage. And the first text is this one. Moral persons in this translation, or the good person, or o homem de bem in Portuguese. I'm just going to read a few passages here, because this text will tell us, you know, what it means, more or less, to be a good person. And then right after, you know, the text right after is good spiritists. So it's basically saying, this is what it means to be a good person. If you need help, go to the next text, and this is gonna help you how to get there. So he starts by saying, truly moral persons, or truly the true good person, there are those who practice the law of justice, love, and charity in its purity. That's it. Period. That's the first sentence, right? So if we were to ask, what does it mean to be a good person? Right there. Those of us who can follow the law of love, justice, love, and charity.
Which book is this one?
Oh, the Gospel according to
Oh, okay.
Spiritism. Sorry, yes. It's the third book that Kardec wrote. Third or fourth? The middle one here. Gospel according to Spiritism. And then he says, if they question, he's talking about, the good person. If they question their conscience about their actions, if they ask themselves if they violated this law, if they have done any evil, if they have done all the good that they could, if they have willingly disregarded any opportunity to be useful, if anyone might have had a complaint about them, and finally, if they have done unto others everything that they would have liked to have done unto themselves. First paragraph. And you can see that the first sentence is, the good person is the one that follows this law. How do we know if we're following the law of justice, law of charity? Through reflection, by reflecting about our own actions, which is exactly the second sentence, which, the good person is the one that questions their conscience about their actions and so on and so forth. So it's inviting us to perform this reflection to see if we are, good, being good people. And then right after he says, they have faith in God and in God's goodness, justice, and wisdom. They know that nothing happens without God's permission, so they submit to the divine will in everything. They have faith in the future, thus they place spiritual possessions above temporal ones. And they know that all the vicissitudes in life, so all our tribulations in life, all our sorrows and disappointments, they are trials and expiations, and they accept them without complaining. He also says that these people, the good people, they live by the sentiment of charity and love for their neighbor, and they do good for its own sake. This is something that Louise loves to bring. It's our ability to do good because it's the good thing to do. To do good just for the sake of doing good. Not doing good because of what someone did to me in the past, or if they were nice to me or not nice to me. No, it's simply to do good because that's the right thing to do. No conditions. And then they go on and on about more things that we'll talk about. And then I'm going to read the first paragraph of the Good Spirits, right? So then the next text, he says, Spiritism, when well understood. So when I understand Spiritism, when I have read a few of the books, I understand it, I get it. But then he says, when well understood, but especially when well felt. So it's not only understanding about Spiritism, but it's feeling it, right? And it's feeling, for example, the law of justice and charity. It's making sense of the law and it's practicing that law. He says that will lead us to become a good person. And they say that would characterize a true spiritist, as well as a true Christian, for they are one and the same. And this is where Kardec is telling us that spiritists and Christians are the same. If you ever doubt it. Spiritism does not create any new morality. So it didn't come to create anything new, it just came to remind us of what Christ had taught us. It says Spiritism only makes it easier for us to understand and practice the morality of Christ by providing an unshakable and enlightened faith to those who doubt or waver. So these were the two texts from the Gospel according to Spiritism that sort of inspired us to talk about this today. And so if we were to, take pieces of this text, we'll realize that part of it is talking about our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with God, and our relationship with others. And here at FSS, we love to talk about things in three types. And so Haroldo gives this Haroldo gives this reflection or this idea to think about which is the best way for us to know whether or not we are a good person. It's through relationships. It's through our interactions. Because it is through those that will be put into a test if we're practicing, law of justice, love, and charity. If we're doing unto others what we wish would be done unto us. So it is through those relationships that we can know whether or not we are being a good person or whether or not we're exercising on how to be a good person. And he proposes then something that Jesus already taught us, I think in Matthew 11, when Jesus talks about his great commandment, and he says, you shall love your God, right, with all your mind, with all your heart, and with all your soul, and then you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So Jesus is giving there to us three key relationships, which is our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, and our relationship with our neighbors. That's what we're going to talk about now, as we see through this text. So, question. I don't need an answer, but a question for reflection is, how is our relationship with God? And it's our relationship, not the relationship of my wife or my husband or my kids or my coworkers. It's my relationship with God. How is that relationship today? Is it a relationship that I only remember about that relationship when I need something? When perhaps I need something, or perhaps I'm sick, or perhaps I have a test coming up, and that's when I'm reminded to ask God about something. Which is good, because then we're asking for help. Asking for help already shows that we're practicing some humility there. So asking God for things it's already a part of the relationship. But there's a huge portion here that's really important with the relationship with God, which is the trust that we have in God. As we know, we can't control everything in life, right? There's just a little bit that we can't control. Everything else, I guess, relies on our trust with God. When we have that trust in God, our serenity can come in, our peace can come in. We're no longer anxious. So it's the same trust, that when you look at small kids, that they have towards their parents. That trust that they know that whatever their parents are telling them is the truth. Right? That their parents will care for them. That's the level of trust that we need to be having with God. And as an example, another time for a story, not from Chico, but from someone very similar, that lived about 800 years before Chico. His name was also Francis, right? And this was Francis of Assisi, who lived in Italy around the 1200 mark. And there is a passage, a story that people tell about him to exemplify his trust and his relationship with God. And this was, as most of you know, Francis was at the time one of those disciples of Christ, that his work was to bring back what Christianity was when Christ was around. Same thing that Spiritism is trying to do. And in doing so, he would do missions, and he would, go throughout Italy to help others. And then he was from a place in Italy called the Assisi, which is very mountainous. There's a lot of mountain ranges, and it gets really cold. It's very humid in the winter, and it snows a lot. And then one time he was coming back from his mission, and it was late at night, and they were cold, they were hungry, they didn't have any more food or water. And then they finally got to the church, and they knocked on the church, and then the church, the door of the church had that little opening. They kind of open it just to see who's out there. When the person opened that little window, Francis said, "Oh, it's Francis, I'm back." And the person was new and said, "There's no way you're Francis. Francis is out there doing things. There's no way you're going to be Francis." Because Francis at that time was revered as the leader of those people. So the guy said, yeah, there's no way you're Francis, and closed the door. And then Francis was with a friend, with a friar, with a Frey. Frey was with him. And then, you know, when the person closed the door, the friar next to Francis said, oh my God, we're going to die. Right? He was anxious, he was angry. He was like, there's nothing else we can do now. Right? We don't have any more food, we don't have any more water. There's a snowstorm, we're just going to die here. And then when he looks at Francis, Francis was happy, and he was, the story is that he was even jumping from happiness. And then the friar could not understand. And he asked Francis, how? We're about to die here, and you're happy, and you're content. How does that make sense? And then Francis told him, I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. Because in this moment right now, there's nothing that man can do. My life is 100% in the hands of God. And in that moment, he was able to experience what it means to have full trust in God. And in front of all that adversity, he was happy. He was at peace. Because he was experiencing that profound trust in God. And then a few minutes later, someone opened the door and
I was gonna ask you what happened there.
so, you know, God worked his miracles through others, and then he went in. But that is the level of trust that we can achieve by this relationship with God. Right? It's trusting that we are in the right place, in the right time, with the right people. Is it still there? Ahí no está apareciendo yo, come on. Okay. So that is our relationship with God. The second one is relationship with me. And I think, what is a relationship with myself? I'm me. How can I have a relationship with me? And one way to think about this, to think about our relationship with ourselves, is to think about, have we ever, throughout our lives, have we ever felt low self-esteem? Or have we ever had a moment of baixa autoestima? Or baixa autoestima? If we have felt low self-esteem, that is our relationship with us. That's an indication of how our relationship with ourselves is. Right? It's the way I'm looking at me of not being good enough. Right? That will make our self-esteem go low. So the good person has resolved their relationship with God, and the good person also has a good relationship with themselves. Right? How do we have a good relationship with us? It's also an exercise, and it's learning to love us, learning to love ourselves today. It's a learning experience. It's not something that, will happen with the flick of the switch. But it's learning to love us. Not loving us when I achieve something, when I get that promotion, or when I get a diploma from school, or when I start going to a Spiritist center, or when I become disciplined and finish reading a book. It's loving us today, because the minute we're putting any conditions to love, it's no longer true love. If we're putting a condition to love, then that becomes a desire, that becomes a passion, but it's not. It's no longer love. Right? And Haroldo goes beyond to say that it's not just loving ourselves, but it's also respecting our own limitations. Right? Not imposing on us, again, requirements that will then make us love us. It's just to embrace what we have today. And that, in turn, will help us love others. It will help us be respectful with others' limitations, and so on. But this is a really important piece of that relationship, right? Relationship with God, relationship with us, and then relationship with our neighbors. And one of the descriptions, and this is something that a friend from Mato Grosso in Brazil talks about, he says, what it means to love myself. And he says, loving yourself means to do everything you can, to use, all the time that you have, to build your virtues. To do the things that will improve you as a person. That is, what self-love is, if you were to explain it as a step-by-step process. And now, it's the third one. Like Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. So we talked about God, we talked about me. Now, it's the next one. I don't know which one is more challenging, but it's the relationship with others. And I'll take what Louise said, talking about charity, right? The importance of charity. And this is where we can, put it to a test. This is where we can practice charity, right? It's our relationship with others. And charity it has the power over us, especially when it talks about the energy to do things. When we think, when we're really tired and we can't do anything else. That's something that would happen to Chico. When he was really tired and asked his spiritual guide, Emmanuel, what do we do next? Emmanuel sent him to those poor neighborhoods to help them, to basically, bring his energy levels back up. That was through charity. And Haroldo, again, who was that person that I based this talk on, in this talk that he gave, it was a talk in a different city, so he had to fly there, and he took a red eye, so he flew overnight. He landed super early in the morning. He was really tired, and then he, sat down and had to go and prepare the talk, so it was a lot on him. And then he got a little testimony, he got a little video from one of the people that were going to attend. And this person said, Haroldo, I really like your work. I've learned a lot from you, and I was really hoping I could see you today, but I'm in the hospital and I won't be able to make it. And that struck him quite a bit. That testimony showed him the charity that he was doing. And in that moment, his energy levels went back up, and he realized why he was doing it, and all that tiredness went away. So the power that charity has on us is huge. And what is charity? There's a question in the Spirit's book that talks about charity. Question 886. I don't know if any of you have remember this one. It's basically when Kardec asks, what does charity mean? Or what did Jesus mean by the word charity? And there's a famous acronym that we say in Portuguese. It's the BIP. It's VIP in Portuguese, or in English would be BIF, which is benevolence towards others, is indulgence towards others' imperfections, and it is forgiveness to people's faults. Those are the three pillars of charity. And we're going to talk about that. About a good person, right? It's the person that, as we see in this text here, when he talked about charity, we can find it. But he basically said, the good person, they find the satisfaction in the benefits they spread around. They find satisfaction in the service they render. They find happiness. They find satisfaction in the happiness that they promote, and the tears that they dry, and the consolation they provide to the afflicted. So we can see here, starting with the benevolence piece, the spirits tell us it's benevolence towards everyone. Kardec says a moral person is kind, humane, and benevolent towards all, regardless of race, regardless of creed, because they regard all people as their brothers and sisters. So, point of reflection is, how is our benevolence towards our neighbors? Again, not towards the close ones, not towards the easy ones to love, but let's broaden this circle a little bit more, right? Perhaps those who have a different race, who have a different creed, and so on. How is the benevolence towards those, right? Because the point of charity here is benevolence towards all, right? How is our benevolence towards those who think differently, who perhaps have a different political party, perhaps have a different religion? How is the benevolence towards everyone? We have seen differences break families quite often. So how is the benevolence? And then the second one is indulgence. Indulgence means, in English it has a different, somewhat different connotation nowadays. But indulgence, Kardec explains what indulgence is, and it basically means our ability to focus on people's virtues. Right? It's not to focus on people's imperfections. And this is what indulgence is, as they talk about here. And as we made that joke, if we're here incarnated on earth, it's because we're imperfect some way or another, and we have something to learn, we have something to improve. So we are going to have imperfections regardless. So again, the indulgence towards everyone is for us in our relationships with our neighbors. Instead of focusing on those imperfections, let's try to push those aside and find the virtues, because everyone will have at least one or two or three. Right? How willing are we to just look at the faults versus to look at their virtues, look at what they do well? So this would be the indulgence piece. And then the last one is the forgiveness. Haroldo talks about how even though we might love someone a lot, right? Even though they might love us a lot, very likely we'll get hurt by a relationship. And relationship with not just a romantic relationship, relationships overall. We're likely going to have to be hurt by them. Perhaps not because they wanted to, they didn't mean to, but something might have happened. So the exercise of forgiveness is pretty constant in our lives as a result of that. Right? Relationships, they need forgiveness to be able to grow stronger and stronger. So forgiveness is something that is out there for us to exercise. Right? And I always say that forgiveness is not something we give to someone, it's not a gift that we're giving someone. It's actually a gift we're giving it to ourselves. Right? By forgiving others, we're just freeing ourselves from that hurt feeling. So there you see, the benevolence, the indulgence, and the forgiveness. So these three relationships, they help us now understand what does it mean to be a good person, or to ask ourselves, am I being a good person? Right? We can then scan through these three relationships and see whether or not we are, and what areas that perhaps I might want to work on a little bit. And just to end, reading the last paragraph that Kardec talks about here. He says, this by far is not a list of all the qualities that define moral persons, but whoever makes an effort to possess one of them, it's already in the road to develop all others. Right? So it starts with one. Right? You don't have to, they're not check boxes on being a good person. You have to check them all at once. It starts small, right? But it has to be started. And that's the reflection that Kardec brought to us. And that
It would be extremely overwhelming when we read this text and you think, oh my gosh, how far away I am from all of this. So it's very important that you brought up this last paragraph to remind us it's a step by step. This is the end goal that we are working towards.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, that was all. It's noon. The kids are waiting. But,
I already turned the volume down there.
okay, thank you, I appreciate that. It's getting a little loud. Yeah. Thank you. And, yeah, thanks for collaborating and participating. And for those of you who are new, right now, we're going to do a quick prayer. And then back here, we have the passes. And then there's going to be someone here kind of directing people in and out for our passes. So thank you. And let's end in a quick prayer here. So elevating our thoughts, our minds, our feelings, and in this moment of prayer, is where we're going to open ourselves to our relationship with God, our relationship with our Father. And we ask our guardian angels to help us throughout our days so we can find that trust in God. The trust that He provides. The trust that He loves.